You're live where? In YouTube, not in itorah.com, because there is no. Okay, what do you say to do? Get rid of the Wi-Fi. Okay, let's do that. Do I connect what? Okay, yeah. Okay, and do not disturb means nobody's going to bother me in the class? Okay. Okay, we try now. Plan B of connection. Okay, we seem to be connected, Baruch Hashem, via itorah.com. Good morning, everybody. Today, Tuesday, the 28th day of Tevet, corresponding to the 9th of January. Today's class dedicated for the Refuah Shelema of Shelomo ben Avraham be'Esther, Tzipora bat Marinel, Yaakov ben Sara, and Yada ben Faride. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu give them refuah shelema among the holim of all of Am Israel. Amen. So I'd like to discuss the Gemara of yesterday that is very, very practical. And Be'ezat Hashem, we'll start with that today. The Gemara discusses one of the most fundamental topics related to Shabbat. And we all know well that Shabbat has different elements that makes the Shabbat Kodesh. Obviously, the day of Shabbat does not need my introduction. The Pasuk already says, Beni uben bnei Israel ot hi le'olam. The day of the Shabbat is the covenant between God and the Jewish people, the way the Parasha writes. And there are many aspects that makes the Shabbat different than any other weekday. Number one, the Gemara mentions a few. For example, the way or the topics that we talk on Shabbat, the way we dress on Shabbat, even the way we walk on Shabbat. What do we do physically? What we don't do physically? What's permissible to do and what is not allowed to be done on Shabbat, besides the fact that we don't put on tefillin on Shabbat, besides the fact that we say 4 prayers instead of 3 prayers. This is stuff that Baruch Hashem, the Kahal Kadosh, follows and observes on a regular basis. But there is one more aspect of the Shabbat that is perhaps good to speak about it occasionally, and is about the food of Shabbat. The food that we eat on Shabbat Kodesh. Without any doubt, the food of Shabbat carries a certain level of Kedusha that the regular weekday food does not have. Why not? Short answer, because it was done in honor of Shabbat Kodesh. Many people have the beautiful custom that when they eat something on Shabbat, what do they say? Lichvot Shabbat Kodesh. I'm eating this food in honor of Shabbat. And it's true. The way that a person eats during the weekday is definitely way different than the way we eat on Shabbat. Shabbat, we sit at the table, we have the kiddush, we have the bread, we have the challah, the amotzi, birkat hamazon. So the Shabbat carries more of a ceremonial way of eating than the remaining days of the week. The first question the Gemara asks is, how many meals does a person is obligated to eat? I hear music. Is it possible? So make sure that the music is outside of the room, unless we're going to believe that Mashiach is coming. So I will close the book, open the window, and smell. There was a rabbi, thank you. There was a rabbi that had the capabilities of smelling if Mashiach came or not. He heard, somebody in his home heard a lot of commotion. I read this story the other day. Heard a lot of commotion, and somebody said, oh, most likely Mashiach is coming. He says, let me check. He opened the window, tried to smell. He says, Mashiach is not coming yet. We're still waiting. But there were tzaddikim who had that greatness. Let's go back. If we ask the Kahal Kadosh, how many seudot does a person must eat on Shabbat? You say 3. The Gemara says 4. And this does not include Melave Malka. This does not include Mosa'e Shabbat meal. And obviously does not include the Friday afternoon. Some people have an interesting custom that halachically may not be kosher. They organize a Seudah Friday afternoon. And halachically, you're not allowed to have a Seudah on a Friday afternoon certain amount of hours prior to Shabbat, like the loss of Pesach. Why not? כדי שיאכל בתיאבון. If I had a meal on a Friday afternoon, I'm not talking about a Berit Milah Friday morning. I'm not talking about a Shiva Berachot Friday noon. I'm talking about Friday afternoon. Perhaps some people have this custom in the summer, correct? And they do all these meals on Friday. And I think they need to be aware that halachically is not permissible. Why not? Short answer. Because if I ate on Friday afternoon and I satisfied myself through whatever food I ate, how am I going to eat the Shabbat meal later on at night? Somebody says, but hold on, Rabbi, there is another halakha that says, To'ameha hayim zachu. To'ameha means a sample. To'ameha is lit'om. You know what lit'om means? You take a tiny spoon, a teaspoon, you taste the food if it's ready for Shabbat. Maybe you're missing more maybe you're missing more baharat, maybe you need to put lemon, whatever seasoning you are missing. I know you like that. Whatever seasoning the food is missing. That's the meaning of to'ameha. But to make a meal on a Friday afternoon is halachically questionable. And if you never heard of such a thing, I suggest you speak to your local rabbi, and hopefully he will give you the proper guidelines. So the first question of the Gemara is, how many meals I have to eat on Shabbat? Opinion number 1 says 3 meals. Shabbat dinner, Shabbat lunch, Seudah Shelishit. A second opinion says, Rav Hitka, Arba'a. You must have 4 meals. 1 Shabbat night, 3 Shabbat day. And the question is, it's an opinion in the Gemara. Rabbi Yohanan says, Shenehem mikra ahad darshu. Both opinions, 3 meals versus 4 meals, they all learned from the same pasuk. And in the Gemara, it's very common that we find Hachamim that they look at the same pasuk, but they have a different perspective of the pasuk. So the pasuk says as follows. There is in Perasha Beshalach, the Perasha of the man. Shabbat Shira, the Shabbat that we have as Yashir, etc. So I'm going to read you very quickly the pasuk that comes from the Perasha of the man, which is right here. The pasuk says, Bayomer Moshe, Ichluhu Hayom. 1 second, I have it quickly. Bayom Yom HaShishi. I have it. It's in front of me. I just need to find the pasuk. Ichlu hayom. Right here. Ki Shabbat hayom laHashem. Hayom lo timtza'uhu basadeh. Basically, this pasuk says, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the Jewish people, don't have leftover of the man. Every day, you'll get your portion. And guess what? On Friday, you get lechem mishneh. You get double portion. So let's read the pasuk. Bayomer Moshe ichluhu. Ichluhu means eat. But then the Gemara says, hayom, 1 time, hayom, 2 times, hayom, 3 times. So according to one opinion, since 3 times the pasuk says hayom, and hayom, although it means today, hayom means also the daytime. So Rav Hitka says from this pasuk, the daytime needs to have 3 meals besides Shabbat dinner. That's the Hava Amina, the first opinion of the Gemara. The second one says, no. Hachamim say, read again the pasuk. You mentioned because the pasuk says, Hayom, 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 but the third Hayom says, Lo. The third in the daytime says no. So Hachamim say, from here, what do you learn? That Shabbat day you have only 2 meals. Shabbat lunch and Seudah Shelishit. And at night, everybody agrees. So based on this pasuk 25th of chapter 16 of Sefer Shemot, the Gemara says 3 and 4. Rabbanan, and halacha lema'aseh, it's the concept of we follow the opinion of Hachamim that we eat 3 meals on the Shabbat, 1 Shabbat dinner, and 2 Shabbat meals during the day. Now, the halacha calls it Seudah. Now, what is actually constitute a Seudah? So there are many answers. It all depends on what topic are you referring to. You're talking about Seudat Purim? You're talking about Seudat Shabbat, Seudat Yom Tov? So we have a kelal that usually a Seudah to be considered a full-fledged Seudah needs to contain bread. Bread. And this pasuk is all about the bread. The pasuk of the parasha of the man that I just quoted, it's about the bread. And how the bread was called, the pasuk says, Lechem min hashamayim, the man. So the pasuk is referring to the concept of bread. And Baruch Hashem, for the benefit of the Bnei Israel all over the world, maybe many years back, many may have not been ulai, perhaps makpid, meticulous in doing Seudah Shelishit with bread, but Baruch Hashem, as the Torah learning and Torah knowledge and understanding increases on the Jewish people, Baruch Hashem, many, many more people and many more knesses, synagogues all over the world, they do Seudah Shelishit with bread. That is the basic concept. But I think that is important for me to add one more reason. We learned this Gemara a few weeks ago that discusses the topic of reciting 100 berachot a day. During the weekday, it's easy to do that. You have Birkot HaShachar, obviously. You have the 3 Amidot, that's already 57 berachot, besides all the prayers. So during the weekday, it's easy. Now, how do we do on Shabbat? The Amidah of Shabbat has only 7 blessings. The weekday Amidah has 19. So you already are in a deficit of 12 blessings per prayer. So if I have 3 prayers, that's already 36 blessings less that I have. But on Shabbat, I also have Musaf. So that adds me 36 minus 7, 29. So then how do I make up the 29 required berachot? So my day is considered that I have a check mark on the 100 berachot requirements. Short answer, Shabbat we have Kiddush at night, Shabbat lunch, Kiddush, that's already a few berachot. Then you have Netilat Yadayim. Many of us may not eat bread during the weekday, but Shabbat we do. So then you have Beracha of Netila, Beracha of Hamosi, and you have then 4 Berachot of Birkat HaMazon. So that already, every time we eat bread, how many Berachot do I have? 6 Berachot. So by having the 3 meals on Shabbat, including Seudah Shelishit, from the 29 missing, I already made up 18. You understand? So I'm only short 11. It's not a big deal. I didn't add the concept of Kiddush Shabbat night. I didn't add Kiddush Shabbat day. We also learned the other day that when it comes to dessert on the Shabbat table, the halacha brings different scenarios. one halacha says that if the dessert is on the table, then you eat it before Birkat Hamazon. You only say the Beracha Rishona, not Beracha Harona. But ideally will be that do not bring the dessert out to the table until you finish Birkat Hamazon. You finish Birkat Hamazon, now you bring the dessert on the table. And then you can say, Mezonot, Ta'ez, Adama, Sheakol, and on top of that, Beracha Harona. So really, if we do our homework, okay, and we do what we're supposed to do, to have the 100 berachot on Shabbat including, does not create any issue whatsoever. In many places, and is brought down in many sefarim, people say besamim, right? Shabbat night, in many knesses, they give the besamim at the end of the tefillah. In Eretz Israel, it's very common that they bring hadassim to say the beracha of besamim in order to add more berachot on Shabbat. And obviously, since Shabbat, we are in the synagogue, you also, hopefully you stay for the stand-up kiddush at the synagogue, you say the berachot, you pick a few things, you say beracha harona. So be'emet, if we do what we're supposed to do, we should be able to achieve this goal also during the day of Shabbat as well. The Gemara brings additionally a very fascinating benefit on the merit of eating the 3 seudot of Shabbat. So the Gemara says, very simple, in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, and this is the language of the Gemara. כל המקיים 3 סעודות בשבת. A person that eats the 3 meals, Shabbat dinner, Shabbat lunch, and Sauda Shelishit. What are the benefits of these 3 meals? We usually understand that a benefit or a blessing comes to the person when I do a mitzvah. But what is the benefit for eating on Shabbat? Unbelievable, the Gemara says. You will spare yourself from 3 challenging situations in your life. 3 of them. Number 1, it says the Gemara, Meheblo shel Mashiach. The birth pains of Mashiach's arrival. The Mefarshim writes clearly. It says, the time prior to Mashiach's arrival, the world will experience difficulties and setbacks. Guess what? We are seeing them. Even though you may come and say, Rabbi, I saw them 25 years ago. I guarantee you that you will love to change the clock back and go back 25 years ago. The way life was. You remember 25 years ago? Before 9/11, that's simple. Before 9/11, how was life? Hazak, look at the first word he said. He didn't say Aventura, Florida. He said Gan Eden. That's what he meant to say. Gan Eden. No fear, calm, nice, relax. 9/11 came, changed history. A couple of hiccups in between, it made history even more challenging. October 7 came, balagan. All over the world. Without any doubt that we are seeing this. So the Gemara is telling us, you want to have insurance policy for this? Do the Saudot on Shabbat. Number 1. Number 2, this is more on a personal level. Midina shel Gehinnam. God forbid. You know, whenever we say the word Gehinnam, right away, what do we think? Fire and punishment, God forbid. We don't really understand what that means because we are humans. But based on the limited understanding that we have on this topic, it basically means a cleansing process for the neshama. The neshama, after leaves the world, eventually goes to Gan Eden. We even say at Shabbat morning, Kol Israel yesh lahem helek le'olam haba. What is the meaning of that sentence? Every Yehudi, every Jew has a share in the world to come. What you don't know, what we don't know is how soon does the neshama gets to olam haba. Everybody will get there, guaranteed. The question is, how soon? Your train stops in every station, or you take the express lane, or the easy pass route, or the sun pass for Florida? We don't have that answer. So what could create traffic between departure of the soul and Gan Eden? There is a pit stop called Gehinnom. What happens there? We don't know what happens. There are many different opinions what happens. But the plain explanation is, imagine yourself, Gehinnom is like a drive-through car wash. The neshama comes in with all kinds of marks, all kinds of stains, like your car, right? And then you go through that tunnel, so to speak, or tube, and then your car comes wax, undercoating sealant, turtle wax, ozone-free detergent, right? Do you understand? Can you relate to that? And how many options they give you? Do you want basic? Do you want better? Do you want deluxe? Do you want supreme? Which, I'm human like you are. I use the same car wash down the block. I mean, a couple of blocks from here. When I need my car clean, that's what I do. Otherwise, I call a service. I usually do it for Pesach. Interior and exterior. How good do you feel when you get your car clean for Pesach? It's like a brand new car. Mamash. Right? Don't we do that every year? Same thing. So the Gemara writes that the zechut of the seudot skips or mitigates the judgment. Post-life. Unbelievable. You're eating and you're extinguishing the Gehinnom. That's basically what the Gemara is telling you. They give you air conditioning Gehinnom. The Gemara writes about this. Mesanenin lo Gehinnom. What's mesanenin lo? They turn on the air conditioning. How do you do that? How do you achieve that? By saying Kriyat Shema properly. Saying Kriyat Shema, you get a free tour of the Gehinnom. But you go into the air conditioning chamber and you walk through, the Gemara writes, and they show you. I know it's scary, but what does it say? That small things can make a huge difference. Now they're telling you, we're paying you to eat. The commercials of food. Who do they get? They don't get me or you. Who do they get? Famous people, correct? And they pay them heavy money. So the Gemara says, you don't need to be famous. You're Yehudi, you do the Saudot of Shabbat, you're honoring the Shabbat, we'll take care of you. And the third one, Milchemet Gog Umagog. The prophetic war that will take place prior to Mashiach's arrival. And even in this short topic of Gog Umagog, there are so many opinions and angles explaining what is Gog Umagog. What type of war is Gog Umagog? You know, when we were children back in the 70s, we used to say, oh, that means Russia and the United States. That's the war, the ultimate war. The Cold War, they used to call it, right? More or less, the Cold War. Okay. Then they said no. It's Iran and Iraq. 10 years later, India and Pakistan. 10 years later, China and the United States. 10 years later, South Korea, North Korea. We don't know. You know what we learned in Sukkot? That the war of Gog and Magog is not a war of the weaponry, the way we thought back then. Today, the wars, you don't need weaponry. You just need technology. You send a virus, a Trojan horse, you hack the system, you insert, and you defeated the enemy. That's what's happening today. Artificial intelligence also has a lot to do with this topic. But the Sepharim write that the war of Gog and Magog will not be a war of the body. It will be a war of the spirit, of the neshama. When the neshama, all of us as Yehudim, will face spiritual challenges against the entire world. That means the good versus the not good. And I think that we can relate to this. How much you said the word anti-Semitism? Maybe, but what I recall reading, it was the challenges of the ideals that the world will promote, which are against the Torah. Time will tell. Comes the Gemara. So what does that mean? It says that for me having, or any of us, 3 Saudot on Shabbat, I will be protected from the birth pains of Mashiach's arrival. So it says, the Gemara, that there is a pasuk in the book of Malachi. He's the last of the Terei Asar. There he writes, הנה אנוכי שולח לכם את אליה הנביא לפני בוא יום השם הגדול והנורא. I'm hereby sending you Eliyahu Navi prior to the awesome day of God. What is this awesome day of God? Mashiach's arrival. And then the pasuk says, "Be'eshiv levavot al banim, ve'le banim al avotam." It will be the teshuvah movement waking up in the world, that the children will help the parents to do teshuvah. And this happened to me this Sunday night. This past Sunday night, a girl came to me and asked a beracha for their parents, for them to become Shomrei Shabbat. The girls goes to a program, and she came back home and told her parents, why can we observe Shabbat? 9 years old. So when I saw this, because the father was proud that his daughter is telling him, observe the Shabbat, I said, your daughter is giving you the prophecy of the pasuk that we just learned. The children will activate the teshuvah of the parents. It's like a girl. This story is famous, that came from Israel, that a girl learned in kindergarten the concept that the mother lights the candles in honor of Shabbat. So she asked the mother, can't you light the candles? My mora, my teacher, told me in school the concept of candle lighting. The mother said, we don't do these things in our home. So the mother the next week sent her to the a grocery store, and she asks the grocery man, do you sell candles? So what the grocery man thought, she came to look for yard-side candles. You know, somebody passes away, you light the memorial candle. So he gave her two. So she came home, she lit the candles, and then the mother goes to the room and sees that the candles are lit. And the mother became suddenly afraid. She's lighting yard-side candles that usually you light for the dead, not for the living, correct? So she asked the daughter, why are you lighting these two candles? It says, one for you and one for daddy. One for her, the mother, and one for her husband, her father. This tickled the neshama of the mother, and the mother took upon herself from now on to light the Shabbat candles. But like the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, one mitzvah brings another. One mitzvah brings the other. The Gemara writes that what's the connection, Mashiach's arrival, with the food? Okay, it's a nice pasuk. It says, Gezerah Shabbat. The pasuk says, in the eating of the Shabbat, Hayom. And the pasuk says about Mashiach's arrival, Yom. It says, Yom Hashem. What letter represents Hashem's name? He. So he says in Gemara, you have Hayom and Hayom. Like the word Hayom says about Mashiach's arrival, the word Hayom says on the food of Shabbat. So he says from here you learn that you want to get extra salvation prior to Mashiach's arrival, follow the meals of Shabbat. Beautiful. The same the Gemara brings a Gezerah Shavah from a pasuk of Sefaniah HaNavi that says, Yom Ivra Hayom Hahu, the day that God is going to skip over refers to the meals, and Milchemet Gog uMagog, the way the pasuk writes, Beyom Bo Gog, pasuk of Yehezkel HaNavi. So the Gemara says, in these three pesukim, the word Yom, it's written. In the Saudot of Shabbat, the word Yom, it's written 3 times on the verse. In Mashiach's arrival, judgment, and the ultimate war, they are scattered through the Nevi'im. The Gemara says, each meal connects to each pasuk. Shabbat night to one, Shabbat day to the other, and the Shabbat Sa'udah Shelishit for the third and final pasuk. The Gemara brings 2 more messages. And it says in the name of Rabbi Yohanan, in the name of Rabbi Yossi, Kol me'aneg et Shabbat. A person, me'aneg comes from the pasuk that says oneg. What's the meaning of oneg? Enjoy, pleasure. You derive benefit from the Shabbat. Can you open the door of the kitchen, please? Thank you very much. Keep it open. I hear something. Open the door. Open the door. Ma kore shama? You okay? Okay, good. Keep the door open, please. Thank you. The Gemara says, whoever derives pleasure from the Shabbat will be blessed. Nahala beli mesarim. What's the meaning of Nahala beli mesarim? Short answer, like an inheritance, like a blessing, without limits. The Gemara uses, the Pasuk rather, from Yeshaya, says, Bekarata la Shabbat oneg. We say this every Shabbat morning when we say the Kiddush. Now, why the Gemara uses the word Mesarim? Mesarim comes from the word Misraim. Misraim. David HaMelech says it in the book of Tehillim, Mina Metzar Karatiyah. So we understand that Mesar, Misraim, Metzarim, they all mean the same. Narrowness and difficulties. Okay? When the person struggles through life, it's called mesarim. So it says the Gemara, by enjoying the Shabbat. Now, what does it mean that a person enjoys the Shabbat? There are many answers to this question. Number one is that you don't look at the day of the Shabbat like if we are in jail. God forbid that a Jew feels this way. But I hope that nobody feels this way. But I believe that some people may feel this way. They look at the Shabbat being restrictive. I cannot do this, I cannot do that, I cannot speak about this, I cannot speak about that. Why do you think that we have so many guidelines on the day of the Shabbat? Because if we don't have these guidelines, so Shabbat will be Saturday. It will not have holiness. Can you imagine if you will be allowed to use a cell phone on Shabbat? You're not Hatzalah, you're not a doctor, you're not bitachon, you're not an Israeli soldier. Can you imagine if we will be allowed to have a cell phone on Shabbat and use it? Our Shabbat will be a regular weekday because we get distracted. Don't be shy. That is the reality of life. So what Hachamim tells us, okay, let's leave technology on the side, dress nicer than usual, eat better than usual, and all these small elements and details is what makes the beauty of the Shabbat, which I didn't even speak about, bathing in honor of Shabbat. You take a shower in honor of Shabbat. Excuse me. And the garments that we wear on Friday, we don't wear it on Shabbat. Why not? Short answer. The garments of the person expose themselves to the outside elements, correct? Correct? How many times you smell your jacket, smells like barbecue, correct? Or smell like perfume, or smells like fish. Where does that come from? What, you spray fish on your, no, but the garment absorb the smell. That's the reality. So guess what? In spirituality, there is also spiritual smell. There is a smell of the weekday and there is a smell of Shabbat. And let me maybe clarify this, because somebody says, I'm smelling my suit. I took it from the cleaners. Smells good. Beautiful. But I'm talking about the smell of the spirit, not of the body. We mentioned this many months ago. When we discussed the song of Sur Mishelo Achalnu. Many people sing this beautiful song before Birkat Hamazon, right? And there in the Sur Mishelo, there is a paragraph that says, Ruach Hapenu Meshiach Hashem. Ruach Hapenu means the smell of the nose of the anointed by a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Mashiach smells. It's not me saying it. It's a pasuk. The pasuk that says, Belo lemare einav ishpot, bayariheu beruach Hashem. I'm not sure which part goes first, but that pasuk means the following. Mashiach will not judge the book, meaning to say the person, by its cover. He's not going to look at the brand of suits that we wear. He's not going to say, oh, you dress so cool, you must be somebody hashuv. The pasuk says he will not judge the book by its cover, Vayariheu beirat Elokim. Mashiach is going to smell. What kind of smell is he going to look for? Irat Shamayim. So when the garments are worn during the weekday, that means that the garment is exposed to all matters related to weekday. You may say, Rabbi, but I have my same face for the past 52 years, 39 years, 21 years. Are you going to change my face? No. But you know what you're going to do? You're going to wash your face. That's what the Gemara writes. Wash your hands, wash your feet, wash your face, wash in your private areas. Obviously, the Gemara wrote it when showers didn't exist. You have to go to the well, pick up 2 gallons of water, boil it. Some people in the room may have seen it back 180, 90, 70 years ago. To have hot water, you needed to boil. Remember that in Egypt? Hazako Baruch, thank you. Okay? This is the way it was. Today, what do? We go to the shower, turn on the shower, you take a shower in honor of Shabbat. And medically speaking, I'm not an expert in this, but what they tell you, that when you wash your face and use soap and use water, hot water, right? It opens the pores of the skin. So now you have a face before the shower and a face after the shower. It's the same face, but you got a new layer of skin, if I can say such a thing. And I apologize. I'm sure that many of the audience may know much more on that topic, but I think that you get the message. That's why the Gemara writes further, and it says one more thing. The Pasuk writes, enjoying the Shabbat. That's why the Zohar Kadosh in Perasha Bereshit, and this will finish. The Zohar Kadosh in Perasha Bereshit talks about 3 things that a person should avoid throughout their lives. 3 things to run away from. One of them is cursing yourself. God forbid. Don't curse yourself. Sometimes people, in the name of disappointment or mistakes, what they do, they start calling themselves names. How could I be such a this? I could have done such a S, X, Y, Z. You understand? Kol shiken, the Zohar says, lekalel aherim. God forbid, to curse others. Not allowed. Bottom line. Problem number 2, the Zohar says, that affects the lives of the person is how does the person gets rid of bread. Let's say you have challah leftover from Shabbat. Half a challah. He's the expert on that field. Watch him. Keep an eye on him. He's going to take all the leftover breads and he's going to break it, right? It's true. He's going to break it. Now he's going to have breakfast. But afterwards, he's going to pick up all the leftover breads. He's going to break them into tiny pieces to feed the fish. Okay? Not the birds, the fish. Okay? Now, why does he go to this extra step of breaking the bread into small pieces? Because the Zohar Kadosh writes that God forbid, if a person disposes of bread on the measurement or size or weight of a kazait, meaning something tangible that you can say berachot before and after, is like the person is shortcutting their own blessings. So if you have a residue or leftover bread, break it into tiny pieces and then you dispose of it. Easy to know, easy to follow. Third one, the Zohar says, and we'll finish with this, escaping from Shabbat. The person that escapes from Shabbat. Now, there are many ways of understanding What does it mean escaping from Shabbat? Simple answer is you finish the Shabbat before the Shabbat finishes. Or you are in a desperate mode. Not because you have to take a flight. No, you just had it. Haz v'shalom. God forbid that a Yehudi feels this way about the Shabbat. Okay? God forbid. We're not talking about Kippur. You're fasting 25 hours. We're not talking about Shabbat. You're fasting 25 hours. Talking about Shabbat. Okay? Shabbat finishes when it finishes. But the Zohar Kadosh adds one more statement that is a bit scary. And it says the Zohar Kadosh the following. That in the zechut of us, Am Israel, on the earth, observes the Shabbat, we create like a mirror image in Shamayim. That what? That the judgment department on Shabbat goes into a recess mode. That is not judgment. There is an exception to this statement, which we're not going to discuss today, but overall, when we say Oseh Shalom Bimberomav, Hashem makes peace in the highest altitudes, part of the meaning of that sentence is that the Ben Ish Chai brings it in Perashah Vayeseh that says that whatever we do here, Shamayim follows. The Gemara in Makot says, Yesh din lemata en din lema'ala. In English means, when we settle matters or disputes or even judgment matters on the planet Earth between people, Shamayim does not get involved. It's a beracha. Because if Shamayim gets involved, it's a whole different ball game. You follow that? You know that often we have signs and we say breakfast and class sponsored by, etc. So the Zohar Kadosh says that in Shamayim they have the same system. They have the system called sponsorship. Now, can I ask you a question? What can you sponsor in Shamayim? If you want to sponsor something at the Safra Synagogue here, you talk to me after the class, I give you a list. That's easy. Why? We live in a physical world. Materialistic matters, financial matters, spiritual benefit is doable. What can you sponsor in Shamayim? I'm going to tell you what can you sponsor, and I give you a beracha that you should never sponsor that in your life. It's a beracha. You know what kind of sponsorship the Zohar talks about? The fire of judgment of the Gehinnom for the weak. Let the word sink in your brain. Can you imagine in Shamayim they announce, I'm not going to put my email address because I don't want Shamayim to send me a message. They use the blanks whiteboard. Fire of judgment for this week, graciously sponsored by. This is a place that you don't want to be ever in that sponsorship sign. God forbid. Can you imagine headaches given to the rabbi today by XYZ? Can you imagine that sign? God forbid. Now, how do you qualify of sponsoring the fire? How do you do it? What do you send? Uber Eats to Shamayim? Dashboard? Or whatever, DoorDash? Okay, how do you do it? The Zohar says very simple. when you finish Shabbat before Shabbat finishes, and you light the candle of Havdalah. Yani you finish Shabbat before the halachic time finishes. And you do Havdalah because you are a good person. You do Havdalah. But then what do? You turn on the candle. The Zohar Kadosh says that's something that is not beneficial for the person at all. Don't curse yourself and obviously others. Don't get rid of bread when they are large pieces. Break them into smaller pieces. And don't expedite the end of the Shabbat. Shabbat takes an extra 3 or 4 minutes. If people will know how much the beracha comes to the person on the merit of Shabbat, people will celebrate Shabbat not 25 hours, 26 hours. For me, I'll be the first one to say, thank God, Baruch Hashem, and I pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that my feelings never change. I don't look forward for Mosai Shabbat. For me, let the Shabbat continue. Why? We learn, we pray, we spend time together. You have people's undivided attention. During the weekday, rushing, traveling, technology, equipments, working, going out. On Shabbat, what do? Home, synagogue, synagogue, home. Home, synagogue, synagogue, knis. Home, chalas. We pray, we learn, we have the Sa'udot. That is the beauty of the Shabbat. So, Be'ezat Hashem, 2 things I need to say. Let it be the zechut of understanding the beauty of the Shabbat and the zechut of the Sa'udot of Shabbat that we discuss, that really brings beracha to each and every one of us. And on a personal note, tomorrow I will not be here, but I will ask Rabbi Ajmi to take over my class. I tried to change my appointment 3 times to no avail. They told me, either you come tomorrow by 10, or wait a month. I cannot afford to wait a month. So B'ezrat Hashem, Rabbi Moshe will be giving the class. Have a great day. I'll be here for the prayers, etc. But I need to leave 9 o'clock. Okay, my good friends? Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen. Rabbi Hanania ben Akashia Omer. רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את ישראל לפיכך, הרבה להם תורה מצוות